Classical Greece was a 200-year period in Greek culture lasting from the 5th through 4th centuries BC. This classical period saw the annexation of much of modern-day Greece by the Persian Empire, its subsequent independence, and it also had a powerful influence on the Roman Empire and greatly influenced the foundations of Western civilization. Much of modern Western politics, artistic thought, scientific thought, theater, literature, and philosophy derives from this period of Greek history. In the context of the art, architecture, and culture of ancient Greece, the classical period, sometimes called the Hellenic period, corresponds to most of the 5th and 4th centuries BC. The classical period in this sense follows the Archaic period and is in turn succeeded by the Hellenistic period, 5th century BC. From the perspective of Athenian culture in classical Greece, the period generally referred to as the 5th century BC encroaches slightly on the 4th century BC. This century is essentially studied from the Athenian outlook because Athens has left us more narratives, plays, and other written works than the other ancient Greek states. In this context, one might consider that the first significant event of this century occurs in 510 BC, with the fall of the Athenian tyrant and Cleisthenes' reforms. However, a broader view of the whole Greek world might place its beginning at the Ionian revolt of 500 BC, the event that provokes the Persian invasion of 492 BC. The Persians were finally defeated in 490 BC. A second Persian attempt, despite having overran much of modern-day Greece at a crucial point during the war following the Battle of Thermopylae and the Battle of Artemisium, eventually failed as well. In 481–479 BC, the Delian League then formed, under Athenian hegemony and as Athens' instrument. Athens' excesses caused several revolts among the allied cities, all of which were put down by force. But Athenian dynamism finally awoke Sparta and brought about the Peloponnesian War in 431 BC. After both forces were spent, a brief peace came about, then the war resumed to Sparta's advantage. Athens was definitively defeated in 404 BC, and internal Athenian agitations marked the end of the 5th century BC in Greece. Since the beginning, Sparta had been ruled by a diarchy. This meant that Sparta had two kings serving concurrently throughout its entire history. The two kingships were both hereditary and were either from the Agead dynasty or the Eurypontid dynasty. Allegedly, the hereditary lines of these two dynasties spring, respectively, from Eurysthenes and Pericles, twin descendants of Hercules. Eurysthenes and Pericles were said to have conquered Sparta 2 generations after the Trojan War. Cleisthenes. In 510 BC, Spartan troops helped the Athenians overthrow their king, the tyrant Hippias, son of Pisistratus. Cleo means king of Sparta, put in place a pro-Spartan oligarchy headed by Isagoras. But his rival Cleisthenes, with the support of the middle class and aided by Democrats, managed to take over. Cleomenes intervened in 508 and 506 BC, but could not stop Cleisthenes, now supported by the Athenians. Through his reforms, the people endowed the city with isonomic institutions, i.e., ones that all have the same rights, and established ostracism. The isonomic and isogoric democracy was first organized into about 130 demes, which became the foundational civic element. The 10,000 citizens exercised their power via the assembly of which they all were part, headed by a council of 500 citizens chosen at random. The city's administrative geography was reworked, the goal being to have mixed political groups, not federated by local interests linked to the sea, to the city, or to farming, whose decisions would depend on their geographical situation. Also, the territory of the city was divided into 30 trities as follows: 10 trities in the coastal, Parali, 10 trities in Asti, the urban center, 10 trities in rural, Mesogia. A tribe consisted of 3 trities, taken at random, one from each of the 3 groups. Each tribe therefore always acted in the interest of all three sectors. It is this corpus of reforms that would in the end allow the emergence of a wider democracy in the 460s and 450s BC. The Persian Wars. In Ionia, the Greek cities, which included great centers such as Miletus and Halicarnassus, were unable to maintain their independence and came under the rule of the Persian Empire in the mid-6th century BC. In 499 BC that region's Greeks rose in the Ionian Revolt, following a turn of events, and Athens and some other Greek cities sent aid, but were quickly forced to back down after defeat in 494 BC at the Battle of Lade. Asia Minor returned to Persian control. In 492 BC, the Persian general, Mardonius led a campaign through Thrace and Macedonia and, while victorious and having re-subjugated the former and conquered the latter, he was wounded and forced to retreat back into Asia Minor. In addition, the naval fleet of around 1,200 ships that accompanied Mardonius on the expedition was wrecked by a storm off the coast of Mount Athos. Later, the generals Artaphernes and Datis submitted the Aegean islands through a naval expedition. In 490 BC, Darius the Great, having suppressed the Ionian cities, sent a fleet to punish the Greeks. 100,000 Persians landed in Attica intending to take Athens, but were defeated at the Battle of Marathon by a Greek army of 9,000 Athenian hoplites and 1,000 Plataeans led by the Athenian general Miltiades. The Persian fleet continued to Athens but, seeing it garrisoned, decided not to attempt an assault. 10 years later, in 480 BC, Darius' successor Xerxes I sent a much more powerful force of 300,000 by land, with 1,207 ships in support, across a double pontoon bridge over the Hellespont. This army took Thrace, before descending on Thessaly and Boeotia, whilst the Persian navy skirted the coast and resupplied the ground troops. The Greek fleet, meanwhile, dashed to block Cape Artemision. After being delayed by Leonidas I, the Spartan king of the Agead dynasty, at the Battle of Thermopylae, Xerxes advanced into Attica, where he captured and burned Athens. The subsequent Battle of Artemisium resulted in the capture of Euboea, by which now most of mainland Greece to the north of the Isthmus of Corinth had been overrun, but the Athenians had evacuated the city of Athens prior to the Thermopylae battle by sea, and under the command of Themistocles, eventually defeated the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis. In 483 BC, during the time of peace between the two Persian invasions, a vein of silver ore had been discovered in the Laurion, and the hundreds of talents mined there had paid for the construction of 200 warships to combat Aeginet in piracy. A year later, the Greeks, under the Spartan Pausanias, defeated the Persian army at Plataea. Following the Battle of Plataea, the Persians began withdrawing from Greece and never attempted an invasion again. The Athenian fleet then turned to chasing the Persians from the Aegean Sea, defeating the fleet decisively in the Battle of Mycale. Then in 478 BC the fleet captured Byzantium. In the course of doing so, Athens enrolled all the island states and some mainland ones into an alliance called the Delian League, so named because its treasury was kept on the sacred island of Delos. The Spartans, although they had taken part in the war, withdrew into isolation afterwards, allowing Athens to establish unchallenged naval and commercial power.